In the Western world, in the strongest countries, we see the money supply expanding 20, 25% or more per year. The currency is collapsing. It's losing its value. It's being devalued. The real significance here is if the dollar loses 20% of its purchasing power each year, then the value of your salary is deteriorating by 20% a year. It's not falling at the rate of CPI inflation. It's falling at the rate of monetary inflation. The road to serfdom is working exponentially harder for a currency growing exponentially weaker. Okay? That's the problem. You're a dentist. You're generating 5% more a year for a decade. I'm inflating the money supply at 20% a year for a decade. If you save every penny in 10 years, you'll be able to buy 1/4 of what you could have bought today because the price of housing is going up at 20% a year, and you're just not ever going to catch up, right? Because you're getting paid in currency. The only way you can actually stay ahead is to grow your cash flows faster than the rate of monetary inflation. And that's why the rate of expansion of the money supply is so critical. And that there's not even a word for that other than cost of capital. The best surrogate for monetary inflation, in my opinion, is the S&P index, a distributed market basket of scarce desirable products. So money is energy. The problem is inflation. If we're inflating at 10% a year, you know, you've got 10 pints of blood in your body. When you go to give blood, I take a pint out. When I take a pint of blood out of your body, you lose the red blood platelets. Anybody common sense knows you run the Boston Marathon the next day, you got a problem. You can't perform as an athlete. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to replace the red blood cells. So when I take a pint of blood, you're not going to be able to perform for a month to two, probably 2 months later. Now, imagine if I actually took a pint of your blood every month forever. That's inflation. So I'm running an economy. I'm the king. You know, you have a dojo, and I send someone from the government, and we just take a pint of blood from every one of your fighters, and then next month we do it again, and next month we do it again, and next month we do it again. Now, what do you expect your athletic performance to be?
In decline.
Yeah, that's the problem of a currency which is collapsing. But let me tell you, that's 10%. Venezuela's not 10%. Zimbabwe's not 10%. The Argentine peso was 1 peso to the dollar 20 years ago, and it's pushing toward 200 pesos to the dollar today. They've lost 95, 98, 99%. In a hyperinflating economy or a rapidly inflating economy, you're not losing 10% of your economic value a year. You're losing 20 to 25 to 30 to 40. So that's like I send some dude to the dojo to bleed you every week. And then at some point, I'm sending someone to bleed you every day, and that's the Weimar Republic, right? Hyperinflation. Another metaphor. The currency is to the economy what your blood is to your body, and economic energy or money is to the currency what oxygen is to your blood. So common sense says, if I keep sucking the oxygen out of the room, if I suck the oxygen out of the room, you're going to either suffocate or freeze to death. And if I keep sucking the economic energy out of the currency, the economy collapses. In the extreme, you get ripped back to Stone Age barter, right? When the money doesn't work anymore, I have to trade you cigarettes for bullets.
Right.
And the problem with that is the economy becomes 1,000,000 times less efficient, right? If you don't have money. Now, how many countries in the world have a collapsed currency? 66 are dollarized. There's 180 about countries. There's 130 floating currencies. All of them are weaker than the dollar. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. The US dollar is expanding. It was expanding 10% a year for a decade, now expanding at 14% a year. It expanded 34% over the past 12 months. The dollar is weakening. Okay, it's like the oxygen is getting sucked out of the room. So Tucker, if I told you the oxygen is getting sucked out of the room and there's an oxygen mask drops out of the ceiling over there, what would you do?
Run for it.
Yeah. Put the oxygen mask on. Bitcoin is the oxygen mask. The point of Bitcoin is to fix the money. And money is energy, and energy is life. And if I keep sucking the energy out of the economy, I'm sucking the oxygen out of your system. Either under the best case, you perform poorly. Under the worst case, I suffocate you to death or freeze you to death. That's the problem. That's why empires collapse. That's why economies collapse. And the problem is, it's not just a problem for an individual. It's not just a problem for a family. It's a problem for every institution. It's a problem for every company. It's a problem for every city, every municipality, every government, every civilization. They all have this problem. And you can generally trace the problem to, I fought a war I couldn't afford to fight, and I paid for it with money I didn't have. If I had to fight them with taxes, then eventually my population would say no more, we don't want to pay the tax. If I fight them by inflating the coinage, then I get a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years before people realize it. Eventually I just collapse the currency. So money is essential to civilization. The problem is inflation. And why does it happen? It's a natural human condition because as you have an authority that controls the money, the temptation to inflate the money supply is omnipresent and inescapable, and every civilization has suffered from it at one point in time. What is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the world's first engineered monetary system, and what happened is a set of engineers, nameless engineers, recoiled in horror after the great financial crisis with all the bank bailouts, and they looked and they said, this just isn't fair, it isn't right. We want to create a better money. And they used 2 technologies. They used the internet, the idea that I could network hundreds of thousands or millions of computers. And they used cryptography, the idea that I could cryptographically sign something so that it could not be tampered with anyone, friend or foe. And using those 2 technologies, they conceptualized the idea of an immutable ledger, if you will, a bank in cyberspace. What if 100 people got together, 100 people with money got together and they said, we're going to create a bank in cyberspace. And we want to put our money there, and we don't trust each other. We don't trust the government. We don't trust any corporation. We don't even trust any one computer. So we create a program that keeps track of a ledger, 21 million coins, or shares in the bank, divisible by 100 million, called down to a Satoshi. So 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. You don't have to know that. All you need to know is there's 21 million coin units. You can't make any more. And they wanted to create it so that they could send their money to each other, to anybody in the network. They could store it for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, forever. And they don't have to trust anybody. So they created this idea of Bitcoin. It's an asset that's protected by cryptography, and it's stored on a ledger. The software administers the ledger. The twist is we distributed the software on thousands and thousands of separate computers. Every Bitcoin node is running a copy of the ledger. So everybody in the world that has their money in the bank has a copy of all of the money in the bank and all the transactions since the beginning of time.